Hello, everyone, and welcome to the broadcast. I'm newtmechanist, and today we're continuing our game dev project. Last time we were working on our we changed the way that health is tracked for the player to a sort of independent hearts sort of entity. Hey there, is it icy? That two words are like one with a very complicated second syllable. Icy it is. Welcome. So last time in our project, like I was saying, we changed the way that health works for the player. Hey, Laura. Welcome. To instead of it being a number that is tracked internally and then we interpret that number for things like the UI, we have essentially independent little boxes that intercept the damage as it's rolling through them. And each one can behave differently accordingly. In doing it, I realized that it will let us simplify things like bouncing and piercing logic by acting as essentially kind of intercepts for some of them. So a player wouldn't get these, but let's hypothetically say that there are special hearts that act as a bounce or a pierce. If something bounces, that doesn't consume the health of that bullet. Most bullets would generally have one health. And their behavior is that when they strike something, they take a point of damage. They self-inflict damage. But if you had, say, a bouncy heart, then that bouncy heart can soak any amount of damage. And then it reflects the movement of the thing that is that contains that heart. If it's a piercing heart, it just soaks the damage of the hit. Still counts as a hit, could still trigger things like iframes, but it will soak the damage of that hit so that it doesn't count for damaging self-damage impact, but it still will inflict harm on the other entity. So this, like I said, it will greatly simplify how health handling is done for bullets and opens the door to new weapon types. In that we can have things like a heart that, say, amplifies damage. After a projectile tags something. Projectile tags something, adds this heart. That heart doesn't block a hit from going through, but it boosts the damage that is coming through from that impact. Or maybe it explodes or something like that. It'll be a way to add the explode on impact kind of behavior without it having to be special logic. This is all good stuff. So that's what we'll be doing today. Before we do, though, let's check in with the kitties. We do have Ember in her spot across from the keyboard. Camera 1 misbehaving, so you folks missed a bit of a kitty stretch there. Sky over here by the mouse pad, big fluffy boy. He is currently detaining my mouse hand because he wants chin scratches and he wants to hold my fingers. He does. He has one paw wrapped around my index finger while I give him the chin scratches. We'll see how long until he has had enough. Mason over there in the bed, upper left corner. Sherbet is in the little cardboard box in the play area. Molly will also take that spot. Molly has learned where most of the spots are and will take pretty much all of them. She doesn't sit in the cat stand, in the footrest like Sherbet will, but she will sleep on it. So that's sometimes where those two are MIA. Molly on the footrest and Sherbet in the footrest. Sammy passing through the play area. She is off to join Molly at the food tray. But yeah. So currently, the new health system is part of the player state. We are going to encapsulate that. So we are going to make a new item. We're going to call it Entity Health. Yeah. Let's see. I don't know. I don't really know what that means. It pops up seemingly randomly. I expect if I learned it, I would be able to find it, but such is life. Oh, okay, let's see. We don't want it there. We want it down here in health. And we are going to move health up into entity because it's not part of the player state. It is part of the entity. Hey, King. It has been a bit since you've swung through. Welcome, welcome. This guy passing over Ember and bumping her with his belly. She is not pleased. All right, let's see. Public partial. With partial class. Ah, okay. You are changing your profile. This is true for everybody. It's if you change your profile, especially if you change it frequently enough, I will forget who you are for a bit. My way of recognizing people is generally going to be by handle and by profile picture sometimes. So I will lose track if you keep cloaking yourself. It's just the way my memory do be. Okay, so inside of this, we're going to mirror some of what's going on in this. In the player state, not in player state, in base player state. Let's see. I kind of don't want enemies to have iframes, but we'll figure out how I want to do that going forward. Hearts to remove. Just so. If people were essentially intangible entities, pictures floating around with name tags. If you swap out the picture and you swap out the name tag, best I've got is how they communicate, because I don't even have voice to go with it. All right, let's see. We have the hearts. So again, what we're doing is we're going to transplant this out of the player state and into the entity. Hey there, Harry. I think I recall seeing you before, but welcome, welcome. Okay, and then the player state, we're iterating over this. We're going to change this logic and deal with that accordingly. But if we build the health into the entities, then we can have the entity intercept a damage message. Well, it doesn't intercept it. It feeds it down the line still. Behaviors can still react to damage being taken. But the likely what we're going to do is change it from a health change into a damage taken message that the health will emit afterwards. Because it's possible that by the end of the chain, damage was not taken. Say, like a particular type of heart absorbs the damage. So again, the bouncy heart or the piercing heart eats the damage. Damage taken doesn't happen. We'll have to figure out a way to mitigate that, or to make it so that we don't get too many of those messages. But we'll see. We'll see. Perhaps an end step sort of thing. Okay, so we need a remove heart logic. We need the texture changed message. So that is in the base heart. So we need to subscribe to that anytime we add a heart, but we are not adding the hearts here. Entity health. Okay. This needs to emit the messages that the health UI is relying on. So health visuals changed is one that we can do. So that is in player state. Base player state. Go to definition. Interesting. So we're going to take this one, and we're going to move that into entity health. It's not going to like that because it's already defined over here in player state. By removing this, it's going to dislike what we've just done. We won't need the whole function for it, but we're going to put it there for now. Well, thank you, Harry. Thank you. We are all learning together. We're all learning together. The player state is the base player state is in the player state. We need to have that public event latched in, right? Hey, Levi. Welcome, welcome. We're really just getting started. Beverage. Okay. Base constructor, and just in case, we're going to have a JSON constructor here. We could make this a catalogable, but it comes down to whether it is actually an entity. I think we want to keep this part of the entity and not actually make it a catalogable. Like, this isn't a thing that you would JSON parse out. It is a second-hand entity. But I need to be able to duplicate it. So I could just give it entity health. Because I really don't want too many object types in the catalog. We already run into problems with that, where the thing we're duplicating doesn't need to be something I can retrieve by name. I just have to copy the data in the object. And we're already accomplishing that with some elements. It's the hearts that is going to be a problem in that regard. And the hearts are iCatalogables. But I can copy the hearts through the catalog. A heart is a catalogable. Okay, that's okay. That's okay then. Hey, JD. Welcome back. We are encapsulating our new health system so that we can extend it into all entities instead of just in the player. Yes. Apparently in C# 9, in the next version, you're going to be able to specify that a parameter is not nullable. There's like a little, like something like that on the parameter. And so that the system will complain if you try to do that. I like that idea because, again, there are times when if a bad value is being passed, that means there is something wrong elsewhere in the system, and it's better that it break than to continue silently. It's not null. Not nullable, so that it means that, I'm sorry, it's ultimately saying I can't pass a null into a by reference value. So this is a class, that makes it a by reference. I refer to that instance of the class, not a copy of its value. Because it's by reference, I can use a null reference. I am not passing a value in. So that's why I have to say if it's not null, because if I try to reference its values, its properties, it explodes. That is one way to do a forced null check, is to not do this check and assume that it's there, because then it will blow up if it's not there. But if I had a way to specify it here, I don't need to do this check, because I know it will be there and we will get a you passed a null into a non-nullable. Ultimately, it depends on what a null would mean for this. In this particular case, yes. So I periodically reference the idea of going kind of layers down in coding and doing stuff in like C++. Like this underscore reference style is something that is back in the older days, where you would have underscore means an internal variable, L underscore means a local variable, G underscore means a global variable, that kind of thing. Just a syntax to use to understand what you mean. So local variable would be like, if I declare an int in here, that's local. It's local to this function or this loop or something like that. This being a member variable, I think there was syntax for these as well. But, global is kind of like we use static right now. It lives outside of the objects. But in C, you also had, trying to remember what it was called. but effectively, you didn't do by reference. You did what's called a pointer to. You would create a variable that contains the address of an object. So a primitive array is a pointer to an area of memory that is the size of a sequential series of the type of variable that it contains. So if I defined an array, I had to say how big it was up front. So it's like 4 integers long. So that area of memory that was allocated would be 4 integers long. So if I had the array would be the pointer to the start of that list. And whenever I incremented the pointer, so it would be like, pointer square bracket 0 would be right at the start. 1 would be 1 integer over, and so on. With pointers, though, you can get... The error ends up being called segment fault, and is one of the nastiest things to debug, because what that means is you touched memory that you weren't supposed to. So you iterated past the memory that you had allocated. That is one way that it could go. The other way that it can go is that it doesn't stop you. And that happens when you do things like copy memory into that pointer. So I've allocated 4 integers. If I try to iterate past that, it doesn't like it. But if I copy memory into it, let's say I have 10 integers, and I copy those 10 integers into the space that was allocated for 4. 6 more integers of data get copied after the end of that. And we don't know what the next 6 integers of space was supposed to contain. It might contain some other variable. It might contain parts of the code. It could be anything. And that's why there have been intelligence agencies that have been begging tech companies to stop coding in things like C++. Because if you figure out what the code is, if you understand there is a pointer here that they copy like an input parameter into, like this string gets copied out of a web API message, and it gets copied into this set of amount of memory. If you figure out in memory, in the program, what the following memory is going to be, you might be able to inject executable code or overwrite variables that will do important things. This has been your lesson in the darker magics of programming. Okay, so for each heart in entity health dot doesn't need to be protected because this is in the constructor of a... Oh, no, it does... No, this is a copy. I don't like that I'm accessing a underscore from outside, but within this language, it seems to be inside of a constructor, I can access the protected members of kind of sibling objects. Like this is an entity health, and since the other one is part of the same inheritance chain, it can access protected values within that constructor. Arts.add services.catalog.copy say a heart. It's our catalog. Yes. So we are duplicating each heart into this one when we copy. We are going to copy the UI needs updating. copy, and then... Okay, we cannot copy hearts to remove. So hearts to remove contains references to hearts in the hearts collection. It cannot be duplicated because of that. That's okay, because in general, when I'm duplicating this, I don't want to duplicate anything that's being removed, but additionally, that shouldn't ever need to be copied, because I'm going to be copying a template if I do this. Is it hypothetically possible that a heart to remove is queued up at the time that a copy happens? Yes. Are we going to deal with that? No, we're not. Could I deal with that? Yes, I could. We could set up an array of values that we never actually delete from. We just set one of them to null. And so each heart gets an identifier and says, this is my heart ID. When it raises the get rid of me event, it says, get rid of heart 3. And you null out heart 3 in the collection. But again, you never actually remove it. You would have to replace it with a dead value. Which is one of the ways that you can do array manipulation without having to do memory reallocation. In the background, when objects use arrays, when you have groups of memory, oftentimes you have a sequential amount of memory allocated. If the collection needs to get bigger, it needs to allocate a new chunk of memory, with different data structures using that differently. Put another way, making collections bigger is usually more expensive than removing things from them, because you can do kind of smoke and mirrors to remove things without actually removing the memory. But if you need more memory, you need more memory. And contiguous blocks of memory are not infinite. There's lots of them. You know, memory has progressed. But every time you ask for a giant chunk of memory, it needs a giant chunk of memory. And you keep using up those big blocks of space, you will end up with little fragments of space that aren't big enough to be used for some of the stuff you want, kind of lurking amongst the big chunks. Another way, things get weird, yo. Where were we? The base player state. Okay, so we need a method for adding a heart. We need to subscribe to, because that will give us this opportunity where we say, we add a type of heart. We subscribe, so we get a copy from the words and stuff. We get a copy from the dictionary or from the catalog. We give it to, we subscribe to its events. We send the initialize message, and then we add it to our collection. So this chunk here, more or less, is what we need in our add heart. Do I use for that? name do I use for the catalog? Yeah, key. Let's use key. Okay, so we are not doing this part. So, see what it's recommending here. Get catalogable heart with heart key. That's not a thing. It's doing that because in code there are patterns of that in place. So it seems like that's what I would write next. But it doesn't exist. So if I were to incorporate that, we could run into a problem. If I get catalogable and I assume it's a heart, this is saying you had better give me a heart. If you give me something else, we're going to have problems. That, handle message. We are going to need a parent entity here. So we can duplicate it into here. So I need to know which entity's health we're dealing with here. Because I will need to be able to do things like send messages to say you're out of hearts kind of thing. Or in the case of, say, like bounce logic, if a bounce heart gets popped, that heart needs to be able to be told what the entity is. It actually will be able to, but you get it. But does a heart initialize message? Do we actually need the player entity there? We might. We might. We might need the owner entity. So where do we get that? I would need to make sure that we set an owner before we add hearts. And that would be a problem during construction. That is, when I am building an entity, I would need to add it with the owning entity in there. Since this is not catalogable, I have some more control over this. So when I copy it, this is going to be the new owner. If this owner is not null, we're going to set it to the value in here, but otherwise we're going to use what's in it. If we don't have a copy, then our constructor wouldn't work right. I'm going to do protected, void, initialize. Entity. That doesn't really help us. We'll just put it here. Hey, sharpshooter, welcome. Okay, we have a 2 copy. I feel like we have to specify this. If this doesn't get specified, we don't know what we're dealing with. It doesn't make much sense in the pattern that I've got. That kitty is Ember. Her favorite spot is right across from my keyboard if she's not latched onto me. Okay, so we set the owner equal to whatever it is. When we are creating this, when we're creating an entity, this is going to get created as part of them, and we are going to set its owner. Ember, like like hot ashes kind of thing. She is kind of a smoky gray with orange patches and white patches, so figured that was appropriate. I generally keep their shelter names if they have a either very applicable name or a mundane name that isn't going to be a problem. Molly was her shelter name was Tammy, but there is already a cat here named Sammy, so we're not going to have 2 cats with a name off by the initial consonant. Because I do like to be able to call out to them by name. They do eventually learn to at least recognize the sound of their name often. So Molly is Molly now. Ember's shelter name was Glowstone because the small children volunteering at the shelter when she was brought in were on a Minecraft tear. So there were a lot of Minecraft names that were used, and we weren't having that. One of my prior cats was a big tuxedo. He was the size of Sky, including the fluff, but all muscle. He was a big old brute, but he was gentle as all get out. Very meek little guy. But his name was Rorschach, and I kept in the shelter, and I kept that because the patterning on his face was very irregular. Very kind of mottled black and white on the face, but like regular tuxedo elsewhere. So Rorschach did seem appropriate. Yeah, he was a big boy. Very snuggly, very friendly. Though he was very protective of the other cats in the colony that I keep, you know? Like, relentlessly protective. Proactively protective. When they lived adjacent to some other cats, some other house cats, there was one of them. There were a couple of them that were picking on Tom, the big gentle Maine Coon, and as well as Weasley, the orange cat. Weasley had become a nuisance because after having been exposed to cats bullying him, he realized that violence is a thing that you can do. Like, before, he was a real gentle cat, but upon being taught that mischief and violence were an option, he took to it wholeheartedly, which meant that the other cats would often fight with him. But Rorschach was very protective of him, which meant that Rorschach went on the prowl and, like, cornered those cats often, like, corralled them into another room and wouldn't let them leave. But otherwise, big gentle boy. Okay. Plus equals that. And we're going to say this. He was very protective. We're going to do this in a loop. Let's not be fancy. I don't need to specify unsigned. If you do something stupid, you do something stupid. How you doing, Ember? What does it matter? So camera 1 is prone to jamming. I say that because Ember has already moved. So if I force it to essentially reassess, Ember will not be here in a moment. Ember is a very chatty cat. If you call out to her and she comes trotting over, she will trill at you while she's doing it. And if you're scratching her back or similar, she'll trill at you. Cat with the most vocal variety is Sky. He has a lot of different noises. Camera 1 is broken, it would seem right now. Let's check and see which ones are working. So the right hand widescreen and the upper right, you can see Ember's feet in the upper right or right hand on widescreen. Just a little bit, like just at the left of the camera. She is squirming around on the canvas that's on the rest of that table. She likes the texture of canvas. It is. Let's see. We have Sky and Molly on the tree. We have Sammy and Sherbet. Sammy on the shelf and Sherbet in the little box there. Mason is unaccounted for, which is uncommon. Maybe he's looking out the window at critters. Let's zoom in on the tree there. It's not really zoom in, it just makes the picture bigger. Yeah, they cuddling. Molly is remarkably friendly. She adjusted just fine. Ember was pissed off when Molly joined in. Sammy to a lesser extent, but Ember in particular wanted nothing to do with the new cat. I don't really have a favorite cat, Sharpshooter. I love all the kitties. Okay, when we are going to remove a heart, now we need to grab that logic. Okay, that's where we have hearts to remove come into play. Yes. Which cat is very funny? The cat that has the most amusing behavior is Sky. When Sky wants something, whether it's attention or particularly when the food dish is empty and he's hungry, and if he is ignored for too long, then Sky is the type of cat that knocks things off shelves. And how he will do that is he will get up on the shelf next to the thing, and he'll start chirping at you. If you look and make eye contact with him, you have to make eye contact. He will chirp at you, and then he will throw that off the shelf, and then he'll chirp at you again. And this will continue until you give him what he wants. The only way to stop that without figuring out what he wants and giving it to him is to not make eye contact. And he will keep chirping at you to try to get you to look. You can also see that he gets real offended if what he throws off the shelf does not make a sufficient crash sound when it hits the floor. If it lands on something soft or doesn't fall far enough, he will look very disgruntled. And try to, knock it around. Okay, so with this, we have hearts to remove. When we get a remove heart, get hearts to remove. Add heart. So this is our health change event here. We're going to add a new event that says if they're all empty. Not really a thing that robots are prone to have, Sharpshooter. Not even an android, so, a gynoid isn't an option either. Okay, so this is during the handle health change. We're just gonna grab that entire thing here. Socket this in because we need oops, wrong button. To some extent, it has become an anachronism, but an android, as far as types of robot are concerned, an android is intrinsically male. If it were female, it would be a gynoid, and that's why when there is no gender determiner, it's droid. But android has often become equivalent to droid, becoming genderless. Just take care of all the cats by yourself. I take care of all the cats by myself. The one, there are a couple of things that I use to make it a little easier. I have good, safe, robotic litter boxes. They have a lot of fail safes in them. In fact, they are very sensitive fail safes. If a cat even gets near, like, sticks their head in the bowl that is the thing, the whole thing will stop operation for several minutes. If a cat touches, like, puts their paw in the interior, like, drop off, it will pause and raise an even, like, more stringent alarm. But I've got that, and then I use water fountains to make sure that the water stays circulating. When I say their food dish is empty, the food dishes I use are actually empty when they're done with them. A good type of dish to use for cats are elevated dishes. It's usually like, for a house cat, they're maybe like 6 inches off the ground. And they're very shallow. Because cats generally don't like it when their whiskers are touched. So with a standard food dish, not only do they have to like lean their neck uncomfortably far down to bite at the food, often the dish's edges will touch their whiskers. And all of that is like an irritant. I do not let my cats outside. If you are going to have a pet cat, it should be an inside cat. There is so much danger for cats outside, it's not a good idea. And additionally, domestic cats are fantastically damaging to the local ecosystem. It is not a meme or like a stereotype that cats kill for fun. They kill for fun. It's killing small animals is as much hunting as play to them. It can get real gruesome. It's something like there is a huge multiplier from number of domestic cats in an area, outdoor domestic cats, to the number of birds that die per unit time. Okay. So here's our health change. This is the entity that is changing it. Or the entity being affected. The entity being affected should always be the player. Or the owner of this. I just really couldn't take it if any of my cats got lost in that fashion. If they went outside on the regular, that becomes a period of time where I don't know where they are. Okay, this will only be a matter if all of that changes. We're making a Bullet Heaven style game. Right now, it is in a broken state because I am actively altering things. Now, as far as would I ever make an RPG? Maybe. I would use a very different engine to do that. A lot of what I'm doing isn't really relevant to a classic RPG kind of pattern. Okay, so we're gonna public delegate void all hearts empty. This will just call out all of the hearts are empty. There we go. So if all of our hearts are empty, we're going to say all hearts empty. If it exists, invoke it. Just so. That is true, Tess. That is true. This kind of stuff could be incorporated into the battle scenes. That is part of the benefit of building an architecture like this, is eventually you might decide, hey, I want to reuse this. So you take all the parts that you might want to reuse, you scrub them down, get the particular implementation elements out of them, you wrap them up in a library, and now you can use them in a subsequent game or program. It is one of the principles of object-oriented design, is the ability to easily reuse things. Can you do that in functional programming? Yes, you can, but now the kind of the data that goes with it becomes a bit floatier. But you can. I do love how, just like fashion is cyclical, programming patterns often get cyclical, where a trend will develop that this is the right way to program. This is the wave of the future. And an old thing will get a new name, and the previous thing will become the greatest evil ever, and you must never do it again. Until it comes around again, and they give it a shiny new name, and host expensive seminars on its use. So we're going to raise health visuals changed. How do we do that in the player state? No, we're not going back to tasks. The new paradigm, the way of the future is, what are you saying? Gravity-afflicted fluid dynamic coding. It's a way to ensure maximum quality for all shareholders in the entire organization. It ensures what would it be, thought alignment between development and the rest of the product stack. Something synergy. Okay, this is just, we set the UI update. Okay, yep. Then all you need is a guy in an overly tight turtleneck with an earpiece to get up on a stage and give a talk about this new paradigm. Here's our health change. We need our handle message now. Now we're going to be able to directly add hearts, and I think we're going to have an add heart event. Let's see, handle message again. The owning entity for the message. I can't remember what it's called. There's a particular type of microphone that actually leverages your jawbone and other elements of your, of essentially your skeleton adjacent to your ears to trigger inner ear vibration. I think there's a brand called Jawbone. It's weird science, but also neat. Okay, when a bullet sends a message. Let's look at a behavior. I have to remember how I did this so that I'm doing it right. Collision health. No, not health. Should be change target health. Processes the message. Where is our base behavior? It gets a handle message. It's going to get a handle message into it. Okay, this is the source entity. And we tell the target, this entity is the one that did this to you. The entity that this message is coming from. So entity is not, in handle entity, that is the source of the message, but not the... So we still want entity there. We're not really going to do anything with it. Return false. So this is where we want our handle health change. If message is what is it called? Message, it is a health message. If it's a health message. Hey, Lunar. Did you add a roguelike, a rouge-like maze minigame? You must make a map of the maze, then release edited copies out in the market to lure adventurers into a trap. Not yet, but that's a neat one. That's a neat one. One of the early ways that I was experimenting with things like Unity, before I actually started making a game, some time before, was to do a maze generator. based on parameters of the maze, like how big it would be. And it would be a maze that filled space. The extension of it would then be to add like entry and exit points in it with specifications for how far apart they needed to be, that kind of thing. And then if we wanted to get really fun, you could have it then generate tiles of those where they would interconnect. That is something that I may end up doing for this, is instead of generating prefabricated maps, have generation logic to use and kind of tile templates to say, these are the tiles that you use, these are the kind of tiles they are, and have logic for interconnecting them, kind of stuff. Complicated, but it would also remove some of the issues with map generation that I'm facing right now. Which aren't technical issues, they are logistical issues. If it's a health change message, we are going to handle so. And when we are handling health change, we run through the heart behavior and we check if they're empty. If they are empty, we tell the world it's empty. Then in player state, we have an end step message. And for those joining us, what we are doing currently is encapsulating the heart system that we did last time. And hey there, nope. We're encapsulating the heart system and then adding it to, well, we'll be adding it to the entities in general, so that instead of instead of it only being the player that uses this heart mechanism, all entities will. And so what we're going to end up with is the ability to react to different behaviors. I mean, I'm fine with hearing about a new streamer there. Nope. That is okay. I would generally avoid advertising them or calling out that they are streaming, but I'm fine with hearing about one just now. Okay, so now we need remove hearts. That's where we iterate through, and then we're going to send a UI update. Anytime there's an update, we're going to send an update. There's no alive check during this. And this becomes a message that could be iterated up, or propagated up. Need UI update when we add hearts, when a heart texture changes. Not when we initially set out to remove a heart. It's when we are removing all of the hearts during the end step. It's our health change. UI update. Message handling. Initialization. Then we have hearts empty and hearts visuals changed. Okay. So for the time being, player is going to set these manually because I want to see if I can make it work again. With each of these. Still load player, still get player, still update. Yep, so I could have like rules for types of tile and how they play with each other. Would still be kind of a data structure. This is a type of tile, these are the tiles that can touch it and in what ways. That kind of thing. And then a procedural generator could turn that into various maps. Tiles, and then build up the tiles, and then so on and so on. Okay, it doesn't need to remove hearts. When it's handling messages, it doesn't do that. When it handles health change, if we're not in iframes, we're going to go in and we're going to rip out all of the heart concepts here. And we're going to have a protected entity health. In our base creation here, we are going to say health is equal to new. Okay, we need the player already at this point. As we don't have a player yet. So the configuring the health is going to be something that happens later, but we're going to leave these in for now. Message, load player. Okay. So we load the player, we build their behaviors. Right here we can have health is equal to new entity health. And we're going to pass in the player as its owner. We pass in an owner because there are going to be hearts that need to know what the target entity is. But we'll see how this plays out as far as how we deal with it, you know? Yeah. So I might be misreading a lot of this, but we'll see. We'll see. Okay, so we create the new health, we load it in, and then for the time being, we are going to do our for each here. Heart. No, we're going to add the hearts directly here. So we'll say health.add heart. Don't think we've defined hearts yet. We've defined textures for the hearts. Okay. So we have heart texture. Let's... This is a basic heart. It is a heart base. Then, let's see, it doesn't have frames. Help UI. So by default, Art has texture keys, which are a list of strings. Okay. That's weird. As texture keys, we're going to need 3 texture keys. And those texture keys are these. Why is it doing that? Why are we getting a blue? Okay. Textures to use for them. Does the base heart have anything specific to it? Okay, so base heart has 3 expected keys. Let's say... we're going to put a 3 there. A base heart is going to have a max health property. This is not true of every heart. Not every heart will have a configurable health property. So say like the bouncy heart that we mentioned. Might still be good to have all of them have that concept. But we'll go with they don't for now. Because I can give them like names specific to what they do in the parameters. B. set that to 2. So what we'll use that for is do we have an initialization area? Okay, we have an initialize, which we are calling during heart initialize. So in base heart, we are going to do a, oh no, here we go. Left is equal to max health. So by the time we get to an initialize message, we should have a max health. Okay, so we set a max health equal to 2, then in the base heart, we say if it's equal to max health, then that's full. If it's not 0 at that point, we're going to say half. Like, you have taken some degree of damage, it's at half now. And then if it equals 0, it's empty. This creates a wide spread. We could have it where until it is actually, like up until it is less than or equal, but we don't really have a good progression of them. If we get fancy later, we could figure out a way to do a sliding scale within the image. Like some sort of masking layer, but that gets fiddly. So maybe later. Okay, so we create our heart base here. And this is, no, that's base heart. We have to match the name. We have to match the name. Because this is catalogable, a heart is catalogable, and base heart is a heart. There's logic in it that's going to iterate over all of this and identify the JSON as base heart, or the class for the purposes of JSON as base heart. Hey, Dodds, welcome. Celebrate the birth of your nation by blowing up a small part of it. Okay. Base 10. Okay, we've added that. So additionally, we need to set up our events here. Health visuals changed plus equals. We need to inform the health UI that this has changed. So this is the player state's health visual changed. But really what this cares about is the health on the player state. Or the player's health. So if we look at an entity, well, we don't have this wired into an entity yet. The health emits health visuals changed. The the health UI cares about that. The entity doesn't. The player state only cares about the health going empty. Should give me an event, right? That is an event. It can just be a protected one. All right, here we go. All hearts empty, we can say health.handle message. The player and the message. Mason. What's the matter? We're going to relay this down. I know. What's the matter? What? He came up chirping at me. We're gonna take a break real quick here. We missed one of them, so we'll take one now. So that I can make sure that they have food, which is one of the things I know is missing based on the dishes over there, which might be why Mason came up to talk to me. Be right back. we're back. So, the water fountain that I use for them has no engine contact, so there is not a pump in the water, essentially, which has been a problem in most of the other fountains that I've used for them. Instead, it uses kind of a vortex system. It spins the water so that it climbs up a surface and exits out of a little fountain. But the lid of the vortex area isn't like a perfect seal, so it can leak a bit. I may try to get some sort of seal around it, but it can't be a permanent thing. So there can be a little bit of seepage there. So I'm watching Mason ignore the actual fountain portion of the water and just lick at the slow dribble of water that builds up around the join between the lid and the vortex area. Hey there, Voldigold. Voldigode. Mason's a odd little guy. Big old sweetheart, but just he's got his own little idiosyncrasies like they all do. There's our health change. So we don't do that here. What button I hit to cause that to happen, but it did. Okay, so if we make the health an exposed value, what's the matter, buddy? It's really been since Molly joined the family. Mason has gotten a little more vocal. By little, I mean for being effectively tied for the largest or second largest with Sky, who you can see at the back of the cat tree there, snuggled with Molly. He is incredibly quiet. And a little meep kind of voice, as opposed to even Ember, who has a reasonably loud trill. And she's itty bitty, yes. It's not apparent I am largely surrounded by cats at all times. Currently, Mason is on the floor to my right. Ember is standing over top of my mouse right now. That cat tree there is behind me up and left. You can see the little canvas bridge nearby it. Sherbet is prone to climbing up that and dive bombing the headrest of my chair. Then even the bedroom is a place where they hang out and snooze on the pillows. That's right. Come here. Come here. If we make the player state health public and make it part of the actual player state, put that back, change its name to health. Ember is demanding attention, which means I have 1 to 2 seconds of time to move a arm to like type or something like that before she gets agitated that I'm not piling affection upon her when she's being held. So what often happens is that I switch which hand is cradling and petting her. So if we move this to player state, just so, and then we go into, yep, I'm sorry. Do that. And that is make that public. Then in the base health UI, if we go to the player state and we say .health visuals changed, now we can get the update that way. Because the health visuals only care about the health of the player entity. Okay. So now we need to go and find any places that are still broken. Mason, what's the matter? Buddy? Is very upset right now, and it's unclear why. Come here, Mason. It's not food or water. Put extra out during that last break. But he was sitting over in the play area, shouting at me. Which is very uncommon for him. So he's getting some belly rubs. Mason actually likes belly rubs. None of the others really do. Molly will tolerate them. Okay, well, it built. Oh. Close the game data folder. I do need to add just a thrown exception that I can catch in the loading screen that says this file is unavailable. Bail out. Okay, we can't do that during the startup. When can we do that? We can't even assume that it's during ready. We could do this during an update call. Let's check game. Health UI. So we are not calling an update on our health UI currently. We could do that during the visual update, though. Public, override, process. Oof. Ember. Expected Boolean initialized false. Initialized void not initialized. We call initialized during the process call. So this is during any we use physics process. So if we're not initialized, we'll call initialize, and in initialize, we're eventually going to call that if services dot player state dot health is not equal null. Then we're going to initialize, and what we're going to do for that is say that. So this isn't really ideal because we need to get the initial state. So we're going to say public here. We're going to make this a call that you can do. Enforce it. So we subscribe to it, and then we tell it, send an update. Which will trigger this, which will update the health. Well, that's not correct, but, you know, we're getting there. The player should not have 100 health. Because I iterated 10 times on add 10. That would do precisely what it did, 100 hit points. Okay, now we need to make sure that it's actually functional. Okay, we are getting hit, but the health UI isn't updating. So let's see, in our base player state, okay, so we have a health message. It's going to apply a -1. So we're going to handle a health message. Okay, we're in iframe time, so we are going to go through. We're going to run until we're out of iframes. Update the iframe. We're going to go into handle message now. Is a health change. It's -1. We are not healing, we are losing health. We are iterating backwards through our hearts. It's not the owner that we should be getting here. I think we should actually be passing that in, but let's verify here. We're not consuming the message. It is a health message. We ensure it's a health message. We are out of health. Okay, that is extra damage that came through. Now we're going to update our state. So max health is 2. It's not max health. It's not greater than 0. We are equal to 0. So we set the texture, and setting the texture should have raised an event. In heart. Here, where we would have invoked heart texture change. And heart texture change should have bubbled up to health. We added the heart. We added heart texture change. And heart texture change is going to set the UI needs updating. When health gets a message, it's never getting the end step. It's never getting end step, that's why. Because in the player state, pass the message on. Actually, So if it's a health message, we're going to return whether it's alive or not, as to whether we're done with the message. But first, we're going to let the health handle the message. Okay, so we got to an end step message there. Well, now we don't have a UI, so that's at least a start. And now we do. So we only want to update the UI once during the process. And that's when we are attaching to here. We're saying the health is not null. We're going to get a UI update. We're going to force it. Going forward, and we've got health visuals changed here. So in our entity health, we invoke all hearts are empty, and that can kill the player. We can raise health visuals changed here. Send UI update during an end step message. We can send UI update. Okay, so we're immediately doing that. Updated textures. Let's go run to here. So we have 10 textures. Step into this function. Health visuals changed at this time does not have any subscriptions. That is during our initial forced update. Okay, we need to change this around. Going to put this check here. Instead of in send UI update. If I tell UI update to happen, it will happen regardless. But the end step will only update it if it needs it. There we go. Our health has returned. And we are taking hits. It is removing hearts because I have that in for debugging code. We'll take that out in a moment. We don't have a death state here. We are going to add that back. Base heart isn't the one removing it. It is the base health UI, I think. No. Initialize at child. Where were we doing it? It's where we trigger it to remove. Here we go. So this will leave empty hearts when they're hit. So then in base player state, when all hearts are empty, we set alive equals false. And now we also need to raise player died. So now we should get empty health containers here. Yep, they're emptying out. And we get our end state. Okay, so we moved this into player. Let's get an interim commit going here. Our game data. Let's just take all of it for now. Okay. So now we have the idea of hearts as a separate entity. Here, where we're setting up the loadout for the player, we get their initial loadout. We could also get how many hearts the player should have, and of what kind. So this is a list of items in it. We could have a parallel list of hearts and heart count, where it will iterate over the list of hearts and put them in order in numbers based on that. Okay. Which means in our... We're going to set this up in the raw entity. Which means it's going to need to exist in multiple of these. Means it needs to exist in the entity. There is no requirement that the entity react to its hearts. And in fact, we're going to be able to move the player state's health out of the player state and into the player object. So players have an initial loadout. Entities will have a health. Those are a JSON ignore, though. We'll put this in the base. Okay, so by default, entities have an entity health. And when we're doing the conversion of entity, when we're loading entity health into JSON, it is not going to be loading it directly. So if we look at this, we're creating a list of the given type, and the return is that list. But can we change that around? We could generate this during the load of the entity. So instead of health being JSON ignore, health is included, but we have a health converter for it, which takes... No. We're going to need to set up two independent properties for it that during the actual run of the entity... Hello, Boom. So what we have to do is we have to get the health value, the hearts in it, to be set up. Because we don't want to emit an empty state early. And we can't do it during base or copy. Well, during copy we can. Equal to copy to entity health of entity dot health entity health. We are doing good. We are... this as the owner, and we're saying this is the copy. And if we set it independently, then it goes here. We could set the owner externally, but we want to set this up so that any hearts that get added are done that way. So this will copy in any of the hearts that are given. This is nude, so now we have that set up. We can have... We can't use a getter setter on a collection of hearts and a separate collection of value of counts, because we don't know when those are going to come in. And we can't read them both at once. We could, in reading that property, we could assume that it is two different types of value. So if I look at one of my JSON converters here, we're iterating over it and we're reading them. And we're saying, okay, whether I'm at the end of the array or not, I'm reading it in and deserializing the current value and checking it whether it's true or not. I could do an array that is assumed to be two values is in sequence. It needs to be heart type value count, heart type count, heart type count. If you don't put it in that order, it don't work. And I think that's probably how we need to go, is to have... I think that will be the most maintainable way, or the easiest way to deal with it, is that we read that in. We get a single array, which could then be turned into an array of key value pairs, which we stuff into the entity. Then as soon as that is stuffed in, we can process it and add it to health, because the health will be in existence as soon as the object is. This scans. So what we would do is, in an entity, we will have paired columns, and this will look kind of wonky because you're going to have like entity health, and you are going to have a heart type, a string, followed by an int. Heart type int, heart type int, but they are going to have the same key value. That is going to create an array during the read process, and this would be the one that would parse it. Again, I need to have bailouts in our JSON parsing logic that says if it's taking too long, then fail. That each of these could fail as we're dealing with it. So we need a new JSON converter where we are making we're expecting to return a list of this, and we're converting this over. So we need a entity health converter. We're just going to grab this whole chunk and entity health converter, and is a JSON converter for a list of key value pair of string, int. And we largely need this chunk again. We will have to heavily butcher it here, because we don't have a We don't have the relevant type. Entity health converter, where are you? There we go. We don't have a template type. We do our initial read to make sure that we're not at the end of the string. And we read at the end. So we're going to do 2 reads here in this process. So we do our initial read. We go in and we're going to get our heart key. If we have a heart key, I'm going to say heart equal to say heart key. So, if heart is null, explode. Okay, so if we get this far, we have a heart key. So now we're going to read again and say if do this again. Now we are going to do int heart count is equal to that, and we're going to deserialize it as an integer. If we get an error, we have a problem. Let's do that as 0, and then heart count is equal to that again. If count is greater than 0, then we are going to take this guy up here and we're going to add new key value pair string to int, and we're going to say heart key heart count. And then we're going to return health pairs at the end. So what we're doing is when we get this JSON string in, we are going to iterate over it. Boy, this is going to be different. We're going to assume that the first value is a string and the second value is an int. If it doesn't get that, it has a problem. So this is else. If we get an end of array and we haven't received a number, that's a new exception. Essentially, if I get a heart type and no number, I could actually just ignore that. Let's have a problem for now. So we start an array for each key value pair of string to int in value. Pair in value. Right, string value, string pair.key. Not really a key value pair, it's a tuple. Doesn't matter. What's the difference? Generally naming. Hey, Maddie. Welcome. Today, we are taking the health system that we created yesterday and encapsulating it and expanding it from just being used by the player state to being used in all entities. So we got it wired into the player state, but now what we're going to do is actually wire it into all entities and double back into the player state. We'll still call it pair. In yes, but how does like the file system work in this? Individual scripts. So if you look over here on the right, near the ears, all of these are individual script files that are technically built into one library / executable, but the content of those script files can be referenced by the Godot engine itself. Let me get that pulled up here. Loading. Pretty much. So Godot's kind of thing, as far as how stuff works, is you can you create a tree of nodes. So a Godot game starts with a base tree node. And you can give that node a script. Most of the nodes that I have will have a script to some extent, but most of the stuff that I use is not actually directly implemented in Godot. Like, I have a few scenes as the basis for them. Yeah, where am I hiding some of those? Screens. There should be a game screen hiding around here. There we go. So the game screen by default has the camera, and right now for testing purposes I have an FPS HUD element. So this is what the game looks like. So the core was just that one node with a red dot in the center of the screen to tell me where 0, 0 is. Game just has a camera and an FPS layer. Assuming I haven't super broken something here. That's a distinct possibility. I'm working on some changes at the moment. We load, we start. Okay, so we're going to pause the game here. we're just going to switch over and we're going to look at the remote layer. So what I initially had is I had a health variable in the player state. Player state is independent of the actual player thing on the screen. It's kind of a game level object. And it was just a number, and there was special handling for that in sort of the behavioral chain of the player as well as enemies. Instead of having what was ultimately kind of hacky to deal with all of the different circumstances, instead of having that, what I've created is a sort of health handler. And that health handler contains what we're calling hearts. Each heart can react to damage in its own way. So if I have damage coming in, I send it in from the end of the chain of hearts towards the start. And if it's healing coming in, we go the other way. Each one of those hearts will take some of that value and say, what happens when I take damage or heal? It might change its graphic, it might get removed, it might trigger some other event. Are you familiar with games like Binding of Isaac, or even to some extent Zelda, where you have the little hearts on the screen? The idea of the heart becoming a half heart would be handled by the heart itself. It gets the damage value. It says, I account for 1 point of damage. If I get half a point of damage, then I'm going to become a half heart. You might get like the black exploding hearts in Binding of Isaac, where I took damage, but because I took damage, I'm going to cause a screen-wide damaging effect too. You might get temporary hearts, where if the heart gets used up, it goes away forever. So we implemented that last stream, and after doing that I realized, oh man, this will solve a lot of the janky code in our health handling logic. And so we're implementing that across all entities, saying that they have some sort of health system in place. Even the things that aren't really like permanent entities will have the possibility of having health. They don't need to. And there's nothing about the health going empty that automatically removes the entity. I will have to have handling for that in, though, is what happens when the health goes empty, but the entity doesn't care. What happens to a healthless entity? So if I specify no hearts in the entity, I do need to have it where they're not, like, there's some special handling. If they never have hearts, then they can never die. They can be removed, but they can never die from lack of hearts. Well, hopefully I will get a finished product out there. I do intend to finish this and release it commercially in some fashion. We're going to start with a platform like Steam, and we'll go from there. But if while we're running we look, so if you remember, the core node was just the core node in that red dot. That's there, but now the game node has been attached to it. The game node was originally just the camera and that FPS layer, but now it contains the manager for all entities, all collision, the player's inventory, the state of the player, the state of the world, how to render the map, how to render all of those entities, as well as the health containers. And those containers each contain a heart. As well as, this is like the XP handler. It's not doing a lot. So now if I jump back out, we unpause it. Game mechanics wise, this is the big gimmick of it, where we can on the fly. Right now, the on the fly aspect is not certain. We may change that in the future. But the weapons are modular. It's what they do is dependent on that set of icons that I was swapping around. Very Noida, if you are familiar with it. Noida, Magicraft, Bioprototype. So we have that. We can swap these around and say fire in 3 at a time, move in a wave pattern. Well, not 3 at a time. It's technically 9 at a time. I do want to change it so that the spiral can face different directions, but I don't have it rigged up to do that. Do I have programming socks on? I mean, I have my feet up. But not really socks. Big stompy boots instead. Okay, but everything's still working. Everything is still working. Okay, so in this case, now we need to add health into the entity in order to read it in from the JSON. The entity health we need in the entity. Well, thank you, Maddie. Thanks for swinging through. Public list of tuples of strings and integers. Get set. So when it's initially created, this is, we've called it out. We know it exists. Now we need a place to load it. Ideally, that's immediately. We could change this to be build. Okay, for each. Let's get that committed. Build the player, build the entity, yeah. So this is the entity exists. All of its values should be in place by now. But this is before it's actually in the world. So the object exists, but it's not loaded yet. Or it's not introduced into the world yet. data, do a thing. Thing that we shall do is catalog dot get catalogable where as a heart. Got a heart, then we're going to say our entity health, add heart. Actually, we're doing that here. We go through our set of pairs and we add the hearts. That is the only use case of this thing. When we are duplicating an entity, we copy the health system over. But we're going to call build again. And build will rebuild the hearts. Okay, we'll address this. We'll address this. Okay, and then in our copy, this is health data new list tuple string, and we're going to pass in entity dot health data that we will copy those values into. Yes. And then when we build, we go through and we actually create it. Okay. Should work. It will mean we need to add the entity health properties to our stuff as part of our testing next. So we need to go into our various objects here and update them to have entity health. So our base behaviors. Texture key. Before E value time being, we're just going to go with the basic heart. So this will be here, health data. Don't know why it is copying black over into that. It is obnoxious. Be sure that was base heart. Let's double check. Heart base. And it will be 10. For the purposes of initial testing, we'll do that. Should still work. Because we're just building raw strings up through this point. Okay. Okay. So there's our player. Let's go into our bullets. 1, 2, 3, 4. What I may end up doing is giving everything a heart so that it doesn't immediately die by default. That is, if this collection is empty, then it is assumed that it has one like dummy heart that does nothing. But we'll see how that works. We'll cross that bridge when we get there. Okay, those are bullets, and now into enemies. 3 and 4. E value and E and value. The only things that should have these dummy hearts are things like explosions and the like that are meant to be transient entities. But from a practical perspective, this may still be fine. We'll see. We'll see. Okay, does it explode? It do. Wait. Yeah. Here's a entity health converter. Once more. I didn't have it set up to properly load the data. Where are we getting that, though? No matter what, it is something. It will be overwritten if it's not there. Sorry. If it's there, it will overwrite it. Okay. Going to pause the code. We have no running tasks. Okay, that's good. We need player state, base player state. We're going to go into our update to catch that. Okay. So this, and we need our player object. And our player object is going to have an entity health, which has 10 hearts of base heart. Okay. And then our player state should also have a health collection here. Just so. Which is the actual one that we're tracking. But we will step out of that and get it in place. Because the player entity doesn't care about its own health currently. And each individual entity should react to it differently. Entity will react to it differently than other types of entity will. We might still have to have a how do you react to your health event in their behavior chain. Because right now it is the entity health behavior that actually matters. And the entity health behavior says when you run out of health, go away. But if I wire that entirely... Yep, there's like... you could have things, Lunar, like... you could set up a health mechanic that is akin to what Earthbound used. And that's when you take damage, the damage starts to, like, roll the health counter down. It takes time for the damage to apply. There are a lot of games that do that. Like, if you take a hit, the damage is applied over time, essentially. Okay, when we build the player, that's when the health is going to show up. Player.health, entity health. Let's expose the health value. It's dealing with this for things other than the player. So we need to be able to apply some sort of empty health handler into the player's health. Now, actually, this could be accomplished by the last heart. The last heart... but that'll mess with the visuals. We kind of need to have a health handler. a thing that wraps it, and that could be hard coded in that the player's health handler is different. But being able to specify this one does not care about health would be useful. Okay, so now the player's health should be the health that comes from the entity. Now, this is only happening this way because when the player gets the message, we are running it through their health. The entity itself should also have this message. So we can pass this up the chain and say that it runs through that way. I could also have different types of entity to handle the health message differently. So handle health message could be a message here, you know? Like, this no longer ultimately matters. We aren't accounting for iframes any longer. But, you know, we'll cross that bridge when we get there. Weird that it's... Anywho. We're close. We're close. So, the current quandary is we have a couple of unanswered questions. How do we deal with things that don't have health? Let's check our entity health object. When we would take damage, we are going to pass it through. If we remove a heart and there's no longer any hearts, I feel like that should emit an all hearts are empty. If we take damage, we should check, are there any hearts? If there are not hearts and we take damage, ignore it. There is nothing to parse the damage. You cannot have no hearts if you never had hearts. If you had hearts and you lose the last one, you have no full hearts anymore. That seems correct. Okay. So then when we handle a message, we handle health change. And when we handle health change, if our health would change, so if the change is going to be relevant when it comes in, like it is non-zero, we will check for hearts empty. But this is irrelevant if there are no hearts to check. You have to have hearts to take to handle a health change. And when we are removing hearts, that only happens if a heart calls out to remove itself. If count is less than or equal to 0, doesn't need to be less than or equal to, but you might as well. Raise all hearts empty if it exists. Invoke. Okay. If your last heart is removed, it counts as losing the last heart. As in, they are empty now. If you never had hearts, then you cannot have your hearts are never empty. Yes, heartless, if you will. Okay. So now, when an entity gets a message, we need to have that message come through. I think it's okay for the player entity to hard override its message handler and send that to player state. The player entity is completely different as far as that goes. Or is very different than a regular entity. So in base entity, in handle message. Well, not really. This is still true. And so in a player entity in handle message, okay, we do not extend handle message. We could make this a virtual and allow subsequent ones to add to it. So this is send everything through the behaviors, do all that stuff. Which allows for movement and what have you. So I think this is all still... Hello, Molly. Are you going to step on all my buttons? Is that what you're going to do? There you go. Molly says, Sky moved, and I have no one to sit with, so you'll do. He's a very kissy cat. If you, Okay, side camera, you're drunk. I have an idea on some infrastructure changes in the factory here that would allow me to start replacing the cameras that I've got, which would be nice because they are flaking out increasingly. The camera scene that you just saw of an empty heating pad was false because there is definitely a cat there. This is camera 1, which is failing to load. So now camera 1 and camera 3 are misbehaving. All of the cameras are misbehaving. What's going on? Okay, there's bed camera. Okay. 1 and 3 are still flaking out. Oh well. I mean, there's the distinct possibility that one of them has managed to chew through the power cables on them. They don't actually manage to sever the USB cables that power them, usually, but they manage to damage them enough that they cease functioning. Yeah. Um, Sky will definitely chew cords. That's generally one of his "you're ignoring me" behaviors. And Molly will bite at them and pull at them, but she doesn't really chew them. Okay, do I want the player one to completely intercept this first? Or do I want it to let the behavior chain roll through first? Let's let the base handle it first. Player state. Like right now, she was reaching for the charging cable for the phone that acts as my tracking camera. Because she is getting antsy just sitting on my lap. She will eventually want to move. Player entity does not have a special handle message. What we'll do is it really a handle message? Now that we've changed that, I think it's still okay that our handle message could be overridden here. As far as the entity is concerned. Because there might be extra messages that come through. But yeah, it's entirely because of our handler for health that we're considering this. Because we want the player to intercept the health handler. Everything else is going to go away when the last heart is removed. It's going to queue itself up for removal. So, if in the entity we subscribe to an event in entity health, so we're setting up our health data right here is where we subscribe to that event. So, entity health. All hearts empty. Molly. Says, but that charging cable is right near where you're typing. And if your hands are typing, they're not petting me, so I will distract myself with your charging cable. No. Molly is a very floppy cat. She is, like, she can still run around and jump and whatnot, but she's a little clumsier than the other cats. And she lacks some of that feline grace in her movement. And one of the ways that you can see that is, whereas the others will occasionally press the buttons on my soundboard when they pass over it, despite the fact that passing over the soundboard is like the least convenient path for them to be taking. Molly is the only one that reliably presses buttons on it, and in fact manages to hit the dials and similar. Like, very reliably messes with stuff. I've started to refer to my Discord being muted as my sound being mollied. Because again, not only will she hit the mute buttons, like the actual buttons that mute or similar, she will also press the dials, which will hard mute it. You know, that's probably right, Lunar. It's the same reason cats hide in small spaces high up, where they can see the only entrance to the space. It's harder to get to them. It's harder to get to them without approaching them, that kind of thing. Or without you approaching in line of sight. And moving through narrow spaces makes it harder to follow them. That is a possibility, Dodds. There's also just my sound cutting out. I have got I have changed a couple of things that is making that more reliable, but it is still possible that the sound devices just straight up die. There is still a circumstance that triggers that. Virtual. Okay. Cool. If entity health does not already exist at this point, we are going to do an override for it. We're going to have a failsafe here and clear the event. Yeah, Dodds. That has definitely happened, and it's because I don't notice that my microphone audio has cut out. Like, I don't hear my own voice. That trying to do that bothers me because of the sort of echo effect that it gives. So I don't see on the soundboard that the little bar has stopped moving. It is fixable, and ideally I fix it in the right order. There's a very particular ritual that must be performed, or else the machine spirits get pissed off. Okay. So now we have an all hearts empty event, which on entity is the services entity manager, remove entity, this. If all hearts empty happens, we queue up the entity for removal. In the next physics frame, this entity goes away. That should be fine. Hey, Drew. Okay. So if all hearts empty, and then in the player state, in the player entity, we're going to override that. We're not going to call base all hearts. This is a hard override. And in the player state, okay, that does not intrinsically handle the health event. We need to have a way to relay this up. Because the player state currently is listening to health. Player state knows it's an entity player. We are going to add another event here. This is on the player entity. Really need to do on we're changing a whole bunch of things at once with this commit. Okay, the player will raise its own all hearts empty event if the health triggers that. And Drew, we're doing good today. Making some real code progress. Good stuff. So then in our base player state, when we load the player, instead of health all hearts empty, we're going to ignore that. We're going to say player dot on all hearts empty plus equals all hearts empty. We know this is a player entity, so we can directly reference aspects of player entity. Did we break it? Okay, so this is the player health handling the message. We don't want the player health to be referenced here. In the entity, in our handle message, we need to pass the message into the health as well. Yeah, the health might not need the owner. Yeah, the health doesn't need an owner. We'll correct that later. Okay, how is entity health? Might during the ad, like the entity manager might need the one. Okay, no, we still have to build in the creation of the entity process. Okay, so here the entity health in the player has that. And this is the player entity has health. This one is an arbitrary entity. This is the ball of yarn. Okay. This is another yarn ball that wasn't built. I think this is during the copy process. All right, I'm going to step away for just a moment. Be right back. back and here. Okay. I know what I'm doing wrong. One of the reasons that we changed this whole fiasco around here is so that we can do this. Internal variable. Whenever you mess with this one, which is going to be messed with during construction, it will return health data. And during set, set the value. So whatever the new collection is, we now need to do the heart initialization process, which is here. Okay. Whenever you set this collection, then it's going to update, or it's going to do the initial build of the entity health. We're gonna new it up. Which means we don't need to worry about calling the initial build. Okay, and during this constructor, a copy constructor, the JSON hasn't happened. Which means that one's health data is null. The health data can't be null. This is only null if this never got set. This is only not set if the JSON doesn't have it. They're just waiting for it to warm up there. I mean, that's they don't want to miss out. Point test has no health data because it's never specified. And because it's never specified, we never have anything in it. So we can do equals new thing. By default, this is an empty one. This should get us past that case. Okay, player still has no health. No visible health. But the player can still be killed. So that means we're still functioning. Okay, so base health UI. We get a player. And change that to explicitly return a player entity. That should be created anytime we have a player. So let's just try this. If there is a player. Might change the name of that to just health. All null textures. I know there's 10 of them. What's wrong there? Okay. Okay, so how are we getting a null texture loaded in? So let's Might have to add a player loaded event to make sure that we're all set up here. So we have a player object. Player object's entity health contains 10 hearts. Those hearts are base hearts. Their current textures exist. Okay. Up, up, step in. Current texture is a texture wrapper. Step over. Updated textures. Step up out of that. We have initialized. Health visuals did not change, though. Right. Sure, whatever. Okay, blobs are going away. Players being slaughtered because of the iframes not being accounted for. We will have to add in the player entities. We need a handle message in the player entity that will intercept health change messages or collision messages and the like before they get to the regular entity handling, which includes passing messages to health. So in player entity in a override void handle message. Base handle message comes after. Message is health message and pass it to base player state. Pass it to player state. feel like my project is going a bit haywire here. Services.player state. How does the player state handle message? Base player state in collision with player calls in to player state handle message. With an entity. So when the player entity receives a message, it's going to pass in that doesn't seem right. By default, when an entity handles message, it passes this. Okay. I need to review that. Okay, so if it's a health message, we are going to return not alive is one of the cases. If we're not alive, then we're still going to assume whatever happens. Similarly, we're going to consume the message if we've got iframes. So this is where we're handling health change. And we would pass it to health, which we're not using anymore. If we have iframes, we're going to ignore it. So we trigger iframes. Here. This is or if we're invulnerable, we will eat the message. Hey, JCR. We don't let it go to the health. If it's a health message and we are invulnerable, we will stop the message in the player state. So we have almost finished encapsulating the health system from the player that we did last time and moved it into entity in general. We're about to see if this works right. Okay, this keeps being able to happen. Is in the entity health. It has a series of hearts that are base hearts. And their texture keys are full, and empty, but their current texture is null. Which is only... okay. Because this is not coming up as a dependency in the entities. Well, no, it should, because the hearts. But when the entity loads, if the thing that is missing... because hearts are only loading the strings, not the texture wrappers, right? Right, it's loading texture keys. I feel like there's some room for cleaning on this, but if we change texture keys to textures, that we can save some time here. Yeah, we have the textures preloaded. So if we take this to be a... if we change it to be a converter for texture keys into textures... I'm sorry. Yeah, texture keys into textures using our JSON converter here. So I can find it. JSON, okay. Texture name list converter, which will give us textures. That will remove the texture key handling that we've got. We'll see if we need that. It may not actually be a problem. So in a heart, we're going to change this one. New list of texture wrappers. We're going to get rid of our static dictionary here. Is services, catalog, copy. Texture wrapper as a texture wrapper. So means we won't actually need to initialize in the heart here in the same way. It'll still be there as a virtual, though. So now we have textures. texture change, textures, we have current texture. They get set on it. And so in our base heart, let's make sure that all of that's still able. Okay. Yep. So it's just going to be textures. Expected count. Does it break? Oh, it's going to break. It's going to break. Nope. Need to go into our heart. And in our textures, we need to specify that it is a texture list. Let's get a example here. Put a, oh, it's an entity. Base heart. This needs to be a texture name list converter. So that will convert a list of strings into a list of textures. We're running into a problem there. This is converting what? In heart base. In heart base, so the key is there. And we are trying to extract heart base from it. And the JSON exception is what? We're not getting the heart out of it, so that heart isn't ready yet. All right, add to catalog, catalogable data. Okay, so it wants heart base. Let's see if I can patch it. Let's check our heart file. Because it's texture keys, not textures. Not right. It's if the hearts aren't loading properly, then the entities can't load properly, so on and so on. Where else is texture name being used? Heart. List converter. Tile textures. Okay, tile textures in the map. Here. Okay, I'm using the wrong converter. I need a catalog name list converter. Hello, Everton. Hello. Oops, not for that, though. Texture name list converter. That's still okay. But this is a catalogable name list converter, and it's for texture wrappers. Oh, there we go. Okay, verify, still functioning. Iframes are working. No, the iframes weren't working, but we'll have to circle back around to that part. Player hearts might need some sort of logic for resisting damage after they have taken a hit, you know? That it will pass a 0 down and say, if I get a damage message, go into iframe mode. Kind of thing. Like, if I have health left, after having received damage, begin resisting damage for X period. But I don't really want to do that if I can avoid it. But I think let me check some things here. I think we're gonna halt for today. We've made some progress. Buttons. All right, so what we set out to do today was to encapsulate the new health handling system and move it into Entity. There are still some bumps related to those iframes for the player, but now all entities have access to the health system and can pass that stuff along. Which means the existing logic for handling damage doesn't need to be there. Next time we're going to want to test, start verifying that the enemies are taking the damage. We already saw the balls weren't bouncing during that, and that's because the health handler is intervening and saying they die after that hit. Even though the bounce would happen otherwise, at the next physics frame, those the yarn balls got removed because they had run out of hearts. I think that's what was happening. Let me just look there a moment. You can't see it, but I will be able to see it in just a moment. these everywhere so that we can really quickly see it. No, they're still bouncing. Okay. Hey, supporter. We're just wrapping up. We were updating our health system. Let's actually, just as a wrap up for everybody. So we got our health system wired up into the entity level. I still need to make sure it's wired up properly for the enemies, so that they are actually getting their health handled. Yeah, but I think that's going to be next time, because we do need to mess with the behaviors of the enemies in the bullets to make sure that they are no longer dealing with their own health objects. Yeah, I think we'll address that next time. But we made a lot of progress today. We made a lot of progress. And I think the new health system is going to open some doors as far as the type of behaviors that we can add. We still need a couple of other things to really realize that, potential. But we're right there. We're right at the cusp of it. I think it's going to make a lot of the special behaviors that we want to have for bullets and enemies a lot more straightforward. Oh, but with that said, everybody, I hope you had a good time watching with us today. If you like what you saw and would like to see more, remember to like, follow, subscribe, all that good stuff. It helps the channel grow. If you are considering financially supporting the channel, you can do so through platform-specific methods, as well as Patreon and Ko-fi. Links to the various channels are in my profile and in the description of videos. With all of that said, I hope that you have a good rest of your day, and I will see you next time, which is hopefully tomorrow.